I'm on the bank of the Rhine River in Basel, chatting to people on a warm summer evening. So, this is an audio medium. How would you describe what we're looking at right now?
Well, the sun's setting behind the cityscape and we're on the other side of the river, watching people have a very classic Basel evening, floating down the river with their Wickelfisch, having drinks on the side of the river.
Wickelfisch, a waterproof bag in the shape of a fish.
Yeah, everybody's just hanging out with their friends and enjoying life.
This is a very typical thing for, I think, specifically Basel, but also Bern here in Switzerland. You get your dry bag and you pack all your clothes in, and then you just float down the river. It's like a little floaty device, but your clothes are dry, and then you get out at the other end and walk home or whatever, or hang by the river for a bit longer.
And with that, I bundled my microphones into a Wickelfisch and waded into the Rhine. And soon I was floating peacefully down the river with hundreds of others. What possible connection does this have to the world's most famous art fair, Art Basel in Basel? All in due time.
Basel as a city has a very, very strong identity.
It's the place that has more museums, more art experiences per capita than any other place on the planet.
It's such a vibrant city, you feel it when you walk through it.
You are really bathed in culture and not just in the river.
And it's in this vibrant cultural hub that Art Basel takes place each June.
The art that is showed during the week is outstanding and very unique.
So much art together in one place.
Like the culmination of the art world, that everyone is going there because it's like the most important event for art.
Whether you're there to invest,
Art Basel is a marketplace for art at all levels.
Or to be moved by the talent on display.
It gives me so much standing in front of these pieces.
There's no denying that Basel's famous art fair is a one-of-a-kind.
There is a kind of electricity in the city during Art Basel Week.
Collectors, museum directors, artists, curators, journalists, really from all over the world.
The Art Basel is just a really, really one-time opportunity every year to see the best of the best, and I think that's really something special.
You're listening to a series exploring the 9 Swiss top events, hosted by me, Jack Boswell, and presented by Switzerland Tourism and Swiss Top Events. This is Views from the Top. Episode 8, Art Basel in Basel. Tucked up at the northwest of Switzerland, on the Rhine River, minutes away from the borders with France and Germany, you can feel how Basel is shaped by the blend of cultural influences. So it's no surprise that the art fair became such a celebrated and international event for the art world. But first things first, what is Art Basel?
It's a temporary museum of 7 days that really covers what's important in the art world at that exact moment.
That's Maike Cruz, director of Art Basel in Basel. But the fair is much more than a temporary museum, because during those 7 days, it's a place which brings together those in the art world from every corner of the planet.
Collectors, museum directors, artists, curators, journalists. We had visitors this year from Japan and Canada and South America, Argentina. This really transforms the whole city, and everybody comes together to see art, to discuss, to meet, and to celebrate. I think the uniqueness of Art Basel really comes from the level of quality. We go through a very rigorous selection process. So many galleries and projects apply to Art Basel, and we really select the best artists and the most interesting projects to really keep this level of quality and to be very interesting for the whole art world to come and see this selection. And we are in very close discussions with all of them. That's a big part of our job, and we really need to see what's important to them, where they would like Art Basel to steer, what are the new themes and topics, and we really try to develop the art fair according to all these conversations.
And if you're thinking this is just a place for those working in the art world, you'd be wrong.
I mean, we have 90,000 visitors at Art Basel. Many of those are not art buyers or art professionals, but just visitors who love art, and especially the city of Basel, as there's so many important museums here. Many of them are art enthusiasts, and we have schools coming and all the neighbors coming. And they've been, if you talk to people in Basel, most of them have been to Art Basel since they were babies.
And the list of those who have been displayed reads like a who's who of the art world.
I think every very famous artist has been on display. This year, for example, we had a 46-meter-long work by Keith Haring that was displayed for the first time since the 80s. There was a beautiful Kandinsky on display at one of the galleries on the downstairs floor. We had the American series of Robert Frank, which is seminal historical work, on display at Unlimited. Christo, and a very historically important work by Yannis Kounelis. So I could go on and on about really, really important artists that show their works at Art Basel, from emerging to historical.
And for those emerging artists, being included in the fair can be life-changing.
I mean, this is a very important step for artists. First of all, because they're presented to the entire art world and to the art community, but also because it's very important for artists to be contextualized in the right way. Who else is in the sector you are presented? Which gallery are you with? This is very important for artists, and this is all that's happening at Art Basel for them.
One of the things that makes Basel so unique as a city is just how many museums there are. It has the highest concentration in the country.
But it's incredibly important to cooperate with the museums in their shows during Art Basel. This is, again, something that really brings a lot of museum people and curators to the city, and that also contextualizes everything that we do at Art Basel. The museum and exhibition world is extremely important for us, and Basel is really a city that stresses this a great deal.
I wanted to better understand that relationship between the fair and the museums, and lucky for me, I found just the right person to talk to.
Certainly being able to work with a collection such as this one is the absolute pinnacle of one's career in terms of museum work.
Meet Elena Filipovic, director of Kunstmuseum Basel.
It is effectively the first public art collection in the world, more than 100 years before the Louvre, more than 200 years before the Met. There was the public collection of Kunstmuseum Basel, and this is an
It's considered by many to be the most important museum of art in Switzerland.
We have an incredible program planned for 2025 and beyond that include a retrospective of the 19th century French-Italian sculptor Medardo Rosso. We'll have this spectacular new exhibition of Cao Fei, the OG Chinese video artist and installation maker, and it will be her first ever exhibition in Switzerland. Simultaneously, there will be a show called Verso that focuses on old masters and Renaissance works, notably their backsides. So all the things that a public typically doesn't get to see.
What is the Kunstmuseum relationship to Art Basel?
It's manifold. I mean, one could ask the question, what is the Kunstmuseum Basel's relationship to all development of art collecting and institutions in Basel? This is not to bring the limelight back to the museum, but rather to say the museum was founded by citizens and a university and politicians and sort of everyone coming together, believing in the absolute importance of culture. And I think this is the seed for everything else that has happened, including Art Basel. Art Basel could not be in such a small town as Basel without there having been an absolutely extraordinary foundations for these seeds to grow. And I think the seeds started already in 1661. They carry us to the present. It means that there is a love for and understanding of the importance of culture. And everyone knows, the word on the street is that the galleries bring their very best artworks to Art Basel. in Basel. And that's exciting because it means it's a place where you get to see, artwork that also traverses time and geography. Art Basel is becoming much more diverse in terms of the gallery representation and thus what is being brought to Art Basel. So it's a really interesting way to look at art. It is also interesting that many people say they come to Art Basel because they know that within a few days, they get to see the very best in what is offered by institutions. It's a tremendous thing that we have this synergy between Art Basel and the institutions. And there are a number of partnerships that every institution organizes in relation to Art Basel, and Kunstmuseum Basel is no exception. So we have this art breakfast, which typically draws, 1,000 or more art professionals during one morning where they're coming to meet each other, to have breakfast together, but also to experience the collection and the exhibitions. Typically, we're part of, the conversation series or, some other aspect of the public image of Art Basel. I think there's a beautiful synergy there. I think it is important for the town that Art Basel helps to define 1 week when people say, if I don't come at any other moment of the year, that's when I'm coming to visit the whole of the institutional landscape in Basel. It's a great thing. And it's important for us that this partnership continues to thrive, because I love being the director of an institution where I know once a year, everything that we do becomes visible to the largest number of art aficionados.
And there's no clearer example of the city's fierce connection to art than a story which dates back to 1967.
And it's called the Picasso Wunder, the wonder of Picasso. And the prelude to that is that there was a collector who was a huge fan of the museum and decided upon his death that his collection should go to the Kunstmuseum as a permanent gift. But in the clause for the contract, he said there would be one condition at which works could eventually be taken back, and that would be in case someone in his direct line of family would have a catastrophic financial crisis.
You can probably see where this is going. Decades later, his son decides to start an airline which suffers an awful crash in 1967, killing 126 people.
He had to pay off the kind of insurance policy for the lives of these people. The company went bankrupt, needless to say, and he was in this financial crisis.
So he sells off a Van Gogh that's on display at the Kunstmuseum, and the Picassos are next in his sight.
And the director at the time, Franz Meyer, went to the government. It became public that these would be sold unless there was an intervention.
Long story short, there's a public vote. This is Switzerland, after all. They vote on everything. And the local government agrees to put up the bulk of the money to buy the paintings. But not all of it. The museum is still a couple of million short.
All of Basel, and we're talking about CEOs of pharmaceutical companies, hippies, school children, young, old, rich, poor, they all came together to kind of fight to keep these Picassos in the collection of their museum. Through grassroots means, they raised this 2 million. And it was something that the whole of the community did together. There's no better example or no better place in which to work than a place where the context in which you're in, the people understand how vital, how crucial culture is.
Now that I had some context about the city's history with art, I hopped on a tram and made my way back to Art Basel's offices to speak with Andreas Bicker about some of the other ways the fair engages with the city during that week.
We developed, like an event last year that we are offering to all our exhibitors before the fair, like the Rhine swimming, that everybody can guided swim in the Rhine, for like 500 meters or about that. And it was really a great event. A lot of galleries participated, and most of them, they even repeated, because they knew then at the moment how to do, where to go in, how safe it is, what is the whole procedures. And this is a great example, how a collaboration with the city, but also with others can kind of be beneficial for us.
Wait, so you literally have the who's who of art curators from galleries just floating down the river together?
Basically.
It sounds like a piece of performance art in itself.
Yeah. And it's also great, to introduce something which is unique in Basel. you will see it now this week when the weather is great. It's like a public event. We don't, and you see along the Rhine. It's a great like atmosphere, and I think it's also a great plus point in Basel.
Which is how I found myself drifting down the river. And lying on my back in the water under a canopy of blue sky, I began to appreciate just how distinctive the buildings in Basel are, which is no surprise. The city is considered Switzerland's capital of architecture. In many ways, the buildings themselves are pieces of artwork. So after I dried off, I made my way to the Swiss Architecture Museum to meet with one of the curators, Yuma Shinohara.
You have a mix of very, very old architecture. Basel is also a very, very old city with a long and kind of illustrious history going back into the Middle Ages. There's even kind of ancient Roman ruins also as well outside of Basel, so you can also kind of add that, let's say, to the chronology of the city. But of course, the mix of styles kind of ranges from Middle Age, medieval buildings in the inner city to, let's say, more kind of 19th century buildings a little bit outside, as well as a mix of very, very interesting modern buildings and contemporary architecture as well.
Do you think there's something about the character of the area that makes it more open to experimenting with design?
Yeah, I think Basel has always been a city at kind of really the crossroads of Europe, right? I think it has a lot to do with its position on the Rhine. If you look at a map of Switzerland, Basel is really at the northernmost edge of Switzerland. And I think kind of this position at the edge, but also border area with other countries, I think contributes a lot to the openness of the city and the society here to kind of new things and also exchange and kind of experimentation.
Which are the exhibitions that stand out to you that you've curated?
I think one exhibition that stands out to me is one of the first exhibitions I was involved in when I first came to Basel in 2018, an exhibition we did called Swim City, which took as its theme actually the phenomenon of urban river swimming in Switzerland. And so this exhibition looked at, on the one hand, kind of the conditions that allow for this culture of river swimming to flourish in Switzerland, but also at the same time what the effect this culture has on how we perceive and experience the city as well, right? The city is no longer kind of a static kind of outline on the horizon, but rather really kind of a filmic experience, a cinematic experience of kind of buildings and spaces moving past you as you float down the river, right? And at the same time, the river also becomes a sort of a public space. You'll see, especially in the summer, that the river is really the place where everyone is, right? During the day and after work. The river becomes kind of this very democratic space, and that has a lot to do with the way that we actually relate, let's say, to the river.
As the day drew to a close, it struck me that for all the discussion about art, design, and the fair in Basel, I hadn't spoken to any artists themselves.
My name is Elena, I'm 25. When I was a child, I always wanted to be an artist, so I did a lot of drawings. I started to draw when I was really young. Ever since I remember, I did it. I think it's all I really can do.
I met Elena by chance at a cafe tucked away in a cobblestone courtyard in Basel's Old Town. You are from Basel?
Yes.
How would you describe Art Basel to someone that has never been before?
I think the Art Basel is just a really, really one-time opportunity every year to see the best of the best that are right now, also the big players in the art scene at the moment, because there are so many young, rising contemporary artists that are shown at Art Basel at the same time. I think I have been most of the years. I often go, I went this year, last year, but I always come just for this occasion to Basel, no matter where I am or where I study. So
it's that meaningful to you?
Yeah, it gives me so much standing in front of these pieces, looking at how does this painter really paint. It's not the same looking at a start painting on Instagram. I think that actually is also difficult in today's generation because everything is on the phone, but you don't see the actual size. And looking on it on a little screen and standing in front of a 4-meter canvas, it's completely not the same thing, you know. There is a feeling, I think, that you can only feel when you stand in front of the actual artwork. So, yeah.
And how would you describe your painting?
Well, I think that I work with a lot of dark colors, kind of melancholic in my work, I think. Like, I think the reason why you want to do art is because you feel lost in the world, kind of, or you feel like a stranger, and some things are difficult for you to name, but you feel them, so you try to express them in a different way. So you start writing or painting, but at the moment I'm painting a lot of abstract figures that are kind of like in interaction with each other. So I'm trying to find my own style and look at artists that I really like to find some inspiration, you know, for forms and everything. Yeah.
Do you think you've been influenced at all by the work you've seen at the fair?
Yes, definitely. Because I remember this year I was there with a very good friend of me who's also a great artist. We were so inspired. Maybe that's also a reason why I love Art Basel, because we were there and we were talking about every artist we love and then looking at the works, and we're like, oh my God, this technique, you should try this. And she told me, no, Elena, you have to try something like that in your work. That's actually a nice part of it, you know, because you see so good painters, but you're not intimidated by it. You're more like, oh my God, after this week, I want to paint, you know, like I was so impatient to paint again, truly. I remember it so much. We were both like, every evening we were so tired but so happy, and we're like, I'm so excited to paint again.
You've been listening to Views from the Top, a Switzerland Tourism and Swiss Top Events collaboration with the support of our partners Swiss International Airlines and Swiss Deluxe Hotels. A special thank you to Les Trois Rats for hosting me during my time in Basel. It's been a true anti-classic production presented by me, Jack Boswell. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.